Welcome back to the Berg Podcast. Today joining me is Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And today we're going to talk about how we win as a group. So a lot of times we're talking about things in review. We're talking about projects as they wrap up and years as they wrap up. And what we don't get to sometimes is talk about what that means ultimately to our team. So we're going to talk a little bit about as we close things out, because it is that time of the year. We know we're finally getting through the end of our fiscal tax season, so to speak. What that looks like and what that means for a team. So,
yeah, it's one of those things, Bryan. We've talked about sort of how we win, and it's actually come back to me a couple of times that I said, I think it was in one of the original Build Wit pieces where I said, I just want to be better tomorrow than I was today, and that was sort of my marker for how I saw us operating. That every day we want to just be better tomorrow than we are today, and so that leads us a lot to looking back, because the only way you can evaluate where you're going to be the next day, the next month, the next fiscal year, the next job, whatever it is by knowing how you were the day before or the time before. So I think it's really relevant to, our core values, how we look at it.
And it's really a catch-22, right? I mean, because I feel like we're always in this mindset and mentality where we're on to the next thing. We got to figure out what's next. We got to start the next project. Just got to, set new goals, set new budgets. And so that review process actually does not come very naturally, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's Brad recently has really started to work with you, driving, job closeouts to actually force us to stop and look back. And at times, quite honestly, we've been pleasantly surprised with a job that in my mind, I didn't think went financially as well as we had hoped, based on conditions that may have been, part of the job, or it may have been outside of our control, whether it be escalated labor, fuel costs, that we always talk about, or job conditions. Job just didn't go the way it was supposed to go. GC pushed us, just any number of reasons. But as we look at it, sometimes we actually see things are not as bad as I thought it was, or they're in a better shape. And it's really a healthy thing to do. But as you said, not something we naturally do, because we always want to move on to the next thing.
Yeah. And we form these sort of natural impressions based on like our own interactions with the job while it's occurring. Right. And I think that's what you're saying is, if a job just felt difficult, if a job had to sort of grind along, it just didn't feel like it was going well. And sometimes that reflection can be a good way to actually like sort of dissect it and say, all right, this was hard and some things happened that we weren't in control of, but did we overcome them? Were we able to finish that out nicely? Were we able to finish it on budget, on time for our client, quality job, et cetera?
Well, and I think the old saying about, the rearview mirror is much smaller than the windshield. So that's kind of the mentality I think we've been going with so far, is just look back quick, but if you actually turn your head and look back, the rear window in a car isn't much smaller than the windshield. It's just that the mirror is what's very small. And so, it's important now as we grow, and the fact that there's multiple jobs going on at the same time. And, back in the day, all the jobs were in our guts. We did a couple of them at a time, so we had a pretty good handle on every little detail. But as there's been more team members and more people in job management, we lose a little bit of that feel sometime of each job. And so looking back really helps us to connect with the job and to get those details that we might have missed during the day-to-day process.
Yeah, and maybe it'd be a good time to talk just like real briefly about like how do we know if we won or lost, right? Because it's not an exact science all the time.
No, and this starts at the very beginning with an estimate. The key word, it's an estimate. And with that, you have to, they make the best guess that they can based on the job and based on the plans. And then we get into actually building the project. And sometimes that has to vary from what we originally planned on. We have people with lots of experience doing the estimating. They've either been in the field, they've seen the jobs, they've seen hundreds and thousands of jobs between all the estimating team. But each job has its own conditions. And so then we get into it. And you know what? Even if you have one bad day on a job, it still doesn't mean the job didn't go well. But sometimes those days are more memorable right in the moment than the good days. And the other thing is that these jobs that we're doing now, it's not a week-long job for most part. It's not a day-long job. These jobs go on for months on end. And there's multiples at the same time going on. So all those factors, you just keep looking forward to what's tomorrow. And actually the last 3 months, could have come out okay. It's just that, we're forward looking, and that's the reality of that. Sometimes we have to take a deep breath and turn our shoulders and look out the back window.
You know, it's funny for when you talk about it that way. Is first, since we've grown and we have more people, one of the sort of, we're very directional right now in this conversation, talking about directions. But Ford always says about we have to pick our heads up because for so long, you know, we wear so many hats, doing so many different things as we've grown that you're busy doing your job. You know, just keep chopping, just keep doing your job, and you never pick your head up and look around and see where you are exactly. You know what it looks like right behind you, and you don't have a feel for that. And then that sort of, you know, the funny part with the estimator in a similar way we've grown is, you know, you have Scott Manning on board now, and Scott he just had a call with me and wants me to get him some geotech information. You know, he said it's got to be around, and I almost snickered in my own head. It's got to be around. Like, yeah, maybe, I don't know, you know, but the funny part of that is it's a struggle because as an estimator, you know, whether it be one of the other estimators or myself, part of the engaging part of it, the interesting part of it is that you're estimating, you're guessing as best you can, you know, trying to incorporate everything, trying to use your own personal skill set and taking that to the table, be as careful as you can to be thorough for the field. But also at the end of the day, we always say, you know, we know what it costs to move a yard of dirt. I also know what they're willing to pay. And if the number gets too close, it doesn't change that they won't pay it. Like, do you want to do the work or don't you? And that's a struggle that some of the estimators get put in is you can go in with, you know, myself, Bryan, Ford, and the estimator, all knowing that this is a little bit tight, but that's where you needed to be to win that job. And so that puts a lot of pressure on the field to then deliver because there's no leeway there. And so, you know, it really becomes important with that, as Ford's saying. That was a great analogy that the windshield's just as big as the back window. It's just you're looking through a little tiny window of it because that's all you can afford. So that's a really good point, Ford.
Yeah, and something you actually just said there, you know, we know what the cost to move a yard of dirt is, right? But what we're making is an assumption based on the historical data. We're saying we've got enough historical information to say this is what it should cost us to move a yard of dirt. Now, it doesn't always cost us that same price to move a yard of dirt, right?
Are you moving it 10 feet? Are you moving it 10 miles? Are you taking it on road? Are you taking it off road? Are you using a big machine, a little machine? Like there's just so many variables. Like moving a yard of dirt is like, you know, counting sands at the sea because each time you do it, it's different because the ocean washes the sand in and out. So there's just no central thing. There's very few jobs. You know, we look back on jobs that we did in the past for certain type of things, but each one has something different on it. I remember years ago, we bid a job to haul dirt from a borrow pit to a site. And we drove it. We calculated the speeds of our machines. We measured our buckets. We did all of those details, like really dug into this one. We knew it inside and out, right?
I mean, Ford, I know exactly what you're talking about. I'll let you finish your thought. But on that one, that was probably more careful than Ford and I have ever been bidding a job in terms of we were certain we could do it because it was pushing the limits of what we had done. And we were certain it could be done with our equipment, with the people we had, with the price of the fuel at this exact rate, and we'd make money. What happened, Ford?
That was an ouchie. We definitely lost some big money on that one. But the thing was, the joke was we drove it. We drove it at the speed of our rock trucks. We drove it. We did the calculations of how many trucks you could load in an hour. We did the push off. Like we had every mathematical equation that we possibly could know on that job, and it still didn't turn out right. It still lost a couple $100,000. And that's the joke of this whole game is that we have a lot of historical knowledge in our heads. We have data in our systems. We have experience, but it's still the rubber hitting the road of the guys in the field getting out there and using their experience on site to adjust to the conditions that are there and do the best they can to beat the targets that we have, because that's what they are. They're our targets. And we talked about this before. When you get an estimate or a job information sheet out, when I took them, it was like a goal to try and beat that. It's like, okay, if it says 100 foot today, I want to do 102, and maybe 105 tomorrow. Or it says move 1,000 yards, I want to move 1,200 yards. So that's really what it is. It's a competition amongst yourself. And maybe that's why I like playing golf, because you're really competing against yourself. You're not against other people. You're really competing against yourself, trying to use your own ingenuity to be able to figure out a better, faster way to get something done.
Yeah, and I think that brings us to a point we want to talk about today, right? Is taking a look, as Ford said, in the rearview mirror, maybe stop the car, get out, and look behind ourselves and say, okay, we looked like we thought it was going to go this way, and we did the best we could with all the data we had and said, this is a reasonable goal. And we work really hard to that goal. But let's take a look back, you know what I mean, and see where we are here now. As Bryan said, as we close out the fiscal side of the tax side of all this and figure it out and really, really unpack where we were over the last, however many months and where we think we're going and how that impacts us and how the company's going to act because of it.
Yeah, and I think it's a great frame of reference, the way you sort of described that estimating process, because by and large, our budgeting process at the senior management level is similar. We take historical trends, we take market conditions, we take our backlog, and we say, all right, we think that these are appropriate targets that we can do at this cost, given the historical information we have. And we use a little bit of industry trending and a little bit of projection, and ultimately that we're measuring ourselves against these targets that we've set that do have some variable in them, right? And that's sort of probably gets us to what you want to talk about a little bit today, Ford.
Yeah, I think that this is a interesting conversation we're about to have, because one is that we never talk about it usually. This is publicly to the team, and secondly, it is we're going outside of our norms of how we handle this, just because of things that we understand. When we put these budgets together, we didn't know fuel was going to go up 40% or different issues with health and things of that nature. And so last year, we closed out the year and we only got 87% to our target budget profitability level.
Yeah. So let's just stop for a second. So when you say 87% of our target budget, what we're talking about is we had an estimate of how much work we were going to do throughout the year, our top line revenue, right? And some guys see that number and they say we're going to do a $500,000 job, right? So we knew what our historical cost of goods were on that type of work. And then we knew what our average overhead is, given the amount of staff we need to carry in the office and support that. And so when you're saying 87%, you're talking, we hit that 87% of sort of what's left at the end after all those expenses, overhead, everything comes out, right?
We'll do it a quick math equation, right? So say $100 is the total top number we're going to do.
We like to call that top line.
Yeah, exactly. Top line, very top number. That's the total revenue. It's not how much comes in to be used. It's what is the total we get paid for the year. And say at the end, we were hoping to have $10 left over after we paid everybody out. Well, basically what we're saying is that we got $8.70 of that $10 because we paid everybody. We paid all of the subs and the employees and the equipment and the materials, consultants, everything under the sun. That would leave us $10 at the end to do simple math. We're just doing round numbers here, but we only got $8.70 when we were hoping to have $10 at the end.
Right. Yep. So, and one of the things we do is, we like to try and use that as a metric for figuring out how we reward our team, right? We say, did we win as a company this year? And if we win as a company, we win as a group, every individual, or did we lose as a company? And that was kind of harder this year in some ways than it's been in the past, I think.
Well, and in 2020, we had the same scenario. We did not hit the target because what normally happens is if we hit that target of $10, then that activates the bonus pool for the team members. And in 2020, we did not hit that. That was the beginning of COVID and all the craziness there. And in 2021, we also did not hit the target. So normally we would not be able to give out a bonus because of the fact that we didn't get to the target that we need to be able to buy equipment and things like that.
Right. So, and let's, again, like Bryan said, stop here, sort of unpack it, think about that. So in the language of when Ford said, if we don't hit that, then we don't activate that bonus pool. In other words, so that is our goal. When we build these targets, we're not trying to say we would like to have the $10. We're saying to be effective as a company and to warrant the kind of exposure is the word I like to use, but the kind of outlay of capital that we have to in order to fund this business, which you're seeing, then we're saying is, a significant portion. I mean, in a best case scenario, we're willing to spend $90 every year to just get $10. So it's not a big return in it. And you extrapolate that out, it's a lot of capital. So we're setting that we hope we can beat that. Not that it's a stretch goal or something like that. So I want to make sure we understand that as a group, we think it's reasonable based on our historical data that we can get to this number with what our costs are.
Well, and also like that extra 1.3%, part of that money is the money that, when we budget this in, is the money that we want to share with our team and
Right.
spread around to the group. And so that extra percentage, that $1.30, in using our numbers, that is part of that cash. That is what we can give out to people. That's why we have those targets, because we want to give out bonuses. We want to give people extra money as a reward for the hard work they
We want
did.
to build in performance increases for the future year, all of those
Well,
things.
even you look at the growth, I mean, how much do we talk about growth?
Right.
And if you fund growth with anything except for bottom line end of year revenue to fund your next year, then that means you're now funding it with borrowed money.
Right.
And if you fund it with borrowed money, even now they don't give money away for free. So that means that if next year you made your $10 in theory, but you had to borrow $2 to offset costs from last year, well, now you're only at 8. And you end up in this cycle where you go down. And I'm not in any way inferring we're in the cycle. I'm saying that is why these numbers are kind of set in stone when we start to set them regularly, is because they facilitate us operating the company this year as well as next year and growing to be able to continue to support more and more team in a better way with newer equipment, with better resources. So it's all built in there.
Yeah, good. That's fair too. And I think one of the benefits of an organization our size, with some level of formality, is that we do have a lot of discretion, right? We get to sort of evaluate this in a different way than like a public company would. Public company evaluates it and they say, they're beholden to their stockholders and they say, hey, we've got to hit these trends, we've got to hit these numbers. If we don't, there's nothing. Well,
there's one other thing that I want to talk about that, and that's part of we talked about it before, the pirates becoming the Navy, and we can get into that some point more. But one of the things that, if you worked for a small company before coming here, the company that we were, you usually judged how well the previous year was by how many new pieces of equipment showed up, because at the end of the year, the small company would probably buy equipment to offset taxes or to do different things because they had cash available. But as we get to be a bigger company, that no longer is the metrics, because we need to replace equipment that's breaking down. We're growing, so we have more team members, so we need more equipment. So the litmus test of the equipment is no longer, now, if we have a very, very bad year that we hope we never have, we probably could not afford it. But now that's part of the budgeting process, is to replace equipment that has lots of hours on it, to add more equipment. And so sometimes people are like, oh, there's a new truck out there, that must mean X, Y, and Z. But unfortunately, that is no longer a measuring stick to if we are in a positive position or not.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing is that's hard sometimes is the amount of work we do is not necessarily a measuring stick either, right? We can be really busy. But the type or style of work that we're doing may not be as profitable or have as high margins, which is part of the reason why we diversify our work so much. We look for specific types of work.
Right. Sorry to just go on a tangent there, but I want to make sure that, because some people, that's, you hear a comment like, oh, there's a new truck. And it's like, I just want to make sure that they kind of can grasp that how that is not the variant that ties to it as much. But getting back to, so we only got the $8.87% of the target that we hit. But what we did as a team was realize that some of these variables of why we didn't get there are outside of the team's controls. There was our friend COVID, there was some inflation, there was some other things that were not there. And so we didn't feel, we wanted to still recognize the hard work of the team last year. So what we did was we tried to figure out a way to scrounge up some cash and to still give out bonuses for last year, because some of the stuff that had happened that adversely affected our goals was not the team's issue. And this isn't everybody wins and everybody gets a trophy type thing, but there is just a level of factor that was outside of our control, and we had to do the best we could within that time frame.
Yeah, and we had to learn some lessons too, right? Some things that I think we took out of last year that we'll have to definitely be accountable for this year as we bid jobs and we fill our backlog and we work in what's sort of a new or more challenging environment from a cost of goods perspective.
Yeah, and something funny here too, as we talk about it, is all that money for COVID, that was put into the economy, and all of everybody thinking about what the personal cost was on them, but it wasn't until we really got through that we really started to be able to step outside the car, look back and say, okay, there was actual costs to this. It actually cost us production and people and time and inflationary pressures and all these things that really impacted us in a way that Ford started to look at it. And it was not something that I certainly didn't know it was going to happen. I don't think you, Bryan, knew it was going to happen. And Ford started to look at it and say, like, okay, maybe we need to step outside of our normal parameters. Maybe Ford needs to be able to pull a lever that he can because of the size we are. We're bigger, but we're not big. And say, okay, this is actually relevant. And I think the team, they did what they could. And I want to recognize that and then invest in them in a way that we hope we turn that back around and with the team that we've built and how we're, better, stronger in our skills as well as our formality, are able to be a little bit better going forward because every dollar is allocated somewhere. So when you pull that $1, the $1's got to come from somewhere. And we're still, we're doing this. I say we as Berg are doing this knowing that there's serious, significant inflationary pressure right now. I mean, fuel is one of our biggest costs. Equipment is expensive, no doubt. Labor is expensive. The salaries are expensive. But they're costs for the most part that we can quantify what they are. But some of the inflationary pressures right now are really, fuel's the best example. I mean, in the middle of it, we saw pipe and we saw some other things, but fuel is one that we really we have no way to know what fuel is going to do. And it can have a significant impact. So it's one of those things when you have an opportunity on a job to impact performance, to do just a little better, as Ford said, to just do 120 feet instead of 100, to move an extra 200 yards. You're talking about impacting bottom line revenue, to get back to the words we were using, top and bottom. You're talking about bottom line revenue. And if we stick with our example of $100, to get that $1 of bottom line revenue, it's going to cost you $100 worth of work. And so you do the math of what it takes to do $100 worth of work, especially at the numbers that we're operating at. And you may be asking a team to do a whole nother job inside of the same time frame that you could have impacted by just being a little better there. So that's one of the things we really count on from the team going forward, is that we're getting better every day, doing better than we were yesterday, and being able to generate, more consistent profits over the course of it that we can then reinvest, which has been Ford's history since he started this. He reinvests as much as anybody I know.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that goes back to what we're going to do here. So we're going to give out bonuses. They are reflective of the 87%, so they're not as big as we had hoped to and targeted to give out.
Yep.
But they still are bonuses. And the timing, we're hoping that they help people. As we feel as a company, we feel the inflation, but in your own home, personally with my family, we feel the cost of food going up, the fuel going up, all that kind of stuff. And so this is a double benefit in that it is your reward from last year for the hard work that everyone put in. But the timing of being able to get it out to everybody in the next couple of weeks is that hopefully it'll help offset some of the personal budget hits that people are taking due to the rise of costs of all the stuff that they need to live a daily life.
Yeah, for sure. I think the timing's good. And I don't know if you want to touch on it, Ford, or not, but maybe it'd be beneficial even just to talk about, the components that usually go into how we decide or how a bonus gets built, so to speak.
Yeah. So there's basically three main components of how we do it. Part of it is how long of that year, the fiscal year that you're here, how long you were here. So if you were here a full year, you get a full share. But if you weren't, maybe you just joined us at the last July. So you're only here for part of that year because, again, we start October 1st and we're done September 31st. That is our fiscal year. So depending on how long you were here. A second piece is your review. So you get to come to talk to supervisor, probably someone from management team, go over how your last year was and what you're looking forward to do the next year. The score on that, it ties to part of your review. And then the third piece is we try and talk to your direct foreman or your direct supervisor that knows you and deals with you on a daily basis and how you're doing. So those three components are how each person gets their piece of the pie. So two people, that might work on the same job, they might get different amounts. Depends, again, how long were they here, how the review went, and how their supervisor feels that they're doing. So that's part of, maybe everybody wants to at times check in with their supervisor and see if there's things that they can improve upon, because that will affect in the future when we can give bonuses, that affects how much cash you get.
Well, and it also, it ties in. There's no review season. We've talked about this. Like, we don't do reviews once a year at a certain predetermined date or window, but rather by a year from, when you were hired, your anniversary. But as the nature of our business, we do end up with a lot of reviews early in the year as we have brought on people historically over the year. We're trying to do the same thing this year. So value that as an opportunity. When we ask you for feedback on your self-review, take the time to engage in that. And when your supervisor, your foreman, the management, whoever you are reporting to comes out and does that review, really try and get as much out of it as you can. And likewise, as a manager or supervisor, try to be as engaged as you can and as honest as you can, because that does relate down the road. You know what I mean? Either way, if you are careless as a supervisor doing a review and you give somebody a really good review, then that's going to impact that they may get a larger share of a bonus than someone that you were more difficult with, and vice versa. If someone is not doing well, you really want to give that as an opportunity to address it, because there is an equal part that you will have as a supervisor later to say, hey, how is that person doing today? And the only way that you're going to be able to utilize this in general going forward, and utilize the bonuses to really be an incentive, is if you're partners in the review process, both yearly and when it's time for bonuses to come out, because that's 2/3 of what determines what your bonus is how you were viewed at the point of your review and how you were viewed right then. That greatly impacts that number.
Yeah. So to wrap it up here, because I think we've talked through a lot of it so far, but I think that there will be bonuses coming out from last year. We did not, unfortunately, hit our targets, but we got close, and we wanted to still share with the team because of all the hard work they do, because we knew some of the stuff was outside of their control. And going forward, we're at the current time, we're close to budget. We're not quite on it yet, so we got some improvement to do as we come out of the winter time here. And we will be trying to help keep you guys up to date on that from time to time as we can. And so that hopefully when we're having this conversation next year, we'll be able to give out the full amount of bonuses based on our targets. So thank you very much.
Yeah, great. It sounds good. Appreciate all the hard work from our team, and appreciate the feedback there. So have a great day. We'll see you on another episode.